our City Council meeting. I'd like to invite everyone to please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. And then if you could please remain standing for our invocation this evening brought by Pastor David Flanoy of Church of the Living God. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bless your name for the blessings you bestowed upon us. We thank you for the spirit of thanksgiving. We ask your blessings over the city council meeting tonight, starting with our mayor and the city council and all their assistants. We ask the blessings of our police department, our fire department, our EMSs. We bless your name over the military. Now we ask that every suggestion, every plan, every idea be pleasing in your sight and acceptable and beneficial to the citizens of Bonner Springs. We thank you for the days of ceasefire in the Middle East. Lord, we love you. We ask your blessings over each and one of us and teach us to love one another as you have loved us. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Moving right along, our first item this evening are citizens' concerns about items not on tonight's agenda. If you'd like to come to the front and state your name and address and speak about any concerns that might be on your minds that aren't on the agenda tonight, you're more than welcome.
Hi, my name is Chera Spass. I live at 13601 Willard Street in Bonner Springs. I know a lot of your faces, and it's good to see you. I am coming with a concern tonight, but as I've told people who also expressed the same concern that I've had conversations with, this isn't a gripe session. It isn't a let's all go get rowdy down at City Hall time. It is a problem-solving time. And so I just wanted to bring this from citizens' concerns, and I believe there are some other people here as well. And I didn't have time to read the bulletin real quick about how the procedures are for this. Is there a time limit? Okay.
Pretty much able to help all the people be heard.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Our concern is the response of the city of Bonner Springs to exceptionally high dollar water bills. This is current information surrounding the issue of significantly high water bills in Bonner Springs over the last several months, as I understand it, okay? I became aware of the problem in April 2023 when I received a bill that was approximately double our usual bill. We had been away on vacation for one solid week. No one was at our home. No water was used. So I called and spoke to a new clerk at the City Hall who explained that the reading had previously been wrong, but that it was caught up now. I didn't really quite understand as she tried to explain it. But she also continued to tell me that I must have a toilet leaking and that dye tabs could be provided. We checked all that. They came out, they checked. There were no leaks. I did notify my city councilman, hi Roger, I think Bob is gone, and they responded to me. I then found a People of Bonner Springs Facebook group that expressed similar concerns that I had had. After a few months of typical bills, I assumed that, yes, the problem had solved itself, which I was glad to see. So I had thrown away my notes from my conversation in the spring, and then I got a bill in October. That was triple our usual bill. And again, we had been away for one full week with no water usage at our home. So here's what I recognize. The city has old water meters. The city has slowly been replacing those. A company went bankrupt. I believe the automated readers or the meter reader company, or the meter company, but I think it was the reading company, if I'm correct now. Is that right? It's unclear. Personnel were not reading the water meters on that note. During 3 months of the summertime and spring, I noticed a city water vehicle sitting in my neighborhood with someone in it for hours at a time. And my neighbor and I both discussed this with concern. And so I went to check on the person after several times of seeing this, and this man was just asleep in his truck. Sometime after that, I no longer saw the truck after I called and expressed concern over that. Okay, I recognize also that there were personnel issues. An automated system has recently been implemented, at least in some of the Bonner Springs meters. As I understand it, remember, okay? A city water manager, as I understand it, is going out to read the meters and taking photos of proof to provide an accurate reading. In my latest reading, they took a picture of the meter with the camera angle so that they could also see my house. So it was my meter and my house. The city has offered payment plans to people who come in to find out why the bill is so high, that the city water rate fee has increased, and that the city is building a new water plant. These are all things that I recognize. I also recognize that a local TV station had the story on about the outrageous water bills in Bonner Springs. Not the way to solve a problem, but not good press regardless. And I had nothing to do with that. Residents were billed, I recognize, and paid bills that were sent monthly, and the city did not go bankrupt during that time that I'm aware of. Residents have paid in good faith. That's the piece I really want to drive here, that they were paying for what they used. Our water rates are the highest in the metropolitan area, according to a story I heard in your own clerk's office here. In October, when I came up to visit about, and to clarify what's going on with this, why the bill again? And by the way, you have a phenomenal lady there in that office, and she is taking it on the nose, I bet, so she needs a raise. But I was in that office, and it's an open office, so there's no privacy there as you're discussing your money matters with the city. And so as I'm sitting there waiting my turn to talk with her, I hear a gentleman and his wife talking to, I guess it's the clerk there. And he said, well, I get it. And she had a stack of papers in her arms, I assumed, about the water bill. He said, but I just can't understand this. He said, I work for the BPU, and he had on his BPU outfit and jacket. He said, and not too long ago, when we were discussing raising our water rates, we did a survey of the metropolitan area. You can call this hearsay if you want. This is my firsthand account of it, as he stated to her. He said that when we did our survey, we found that Bonner Springs had the highest water rate of any municipality in the metropolitan region. He thanked the lady for setting up a payment plan and left. Let's see. What was not done? No letter was sent to citizens explaining the problem. No addendum was added to the water bill to state this was an estimated usage from the point at which the city water department knew that there was a problem with something. When a gas or electric meter cannot be read, it does state that on the bill, an estimated bill. No addendum was added to say that the payment was noted and recognized as excessive, offering a payment plan. There was nothing different about the bills except for the amounts. There was no public response was initiated by the city of Bonner Springs, as far as I know. And I do miss our newspaper. I submit the following be considered. This is not your fault, but it is your problem. A different response is, I believe, necessary to demonstrate goodwill to the people of Bonner Springs, especially it's the Christmas season. Instead of catch-up billing, the city instead begins accurate billing 30 days after the accurate reading as described by the city clerk in taking a picture of the meter and verifying that it is an accurate reading. I propose that instead of a catch-up, that accurate billing begins past that time forward. This catch-up billing is a black eye on our city. That the city shows transparency regarding this issue and pens a letter regarding your thoughtful response and send it to all Bonner Springs water consumers. People that I'm talking with about this that have come to me and talked to me are blaming it on the water plant. Well, we know that's not it. So there's misinformation because there's not information. We need a clear explanation to everyone, not just those people that complain. I submit the following be considered also, that those residents still under the old meter system receive a bill that states this is an estimated use, that you let them know. And then finally, that catch-up water bill payments no longer be sent, and that any payment plan set up due to this problem be ended and considered paid in full. And this is just a quick overlook about long-term utility billing errors from a post in talking about this from an attorney serving in municipal law as an assistant city attorney in the city of Kirkland. And he's from the University of Washington Law School. He concludes when talking about, in the language, in law is ridiculously detailed, but he concludes that long-term utility billing errors can raise difficult issues for utilities and that they should be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. But he also goes on to say, excuse me, he also goes on to say that if a utility finds it has underbilled a customer over an extended period of time, can it simply back bill the customer and apply the 6-year statute of limitations? The answer is no, based on the unreported Washington Court of Appeals decision of the city of Snohomish versus Seattle Mill Company. The utility suspected the underbilling was going on for a while before it did anything about it. Just saying, this is a problem, but it does have a solution. I know there are so many things that govern how you can conduct business, and I acknowledge that and appreciate that, and I do appreciate your time so very much. I'd rather be in my recliner tonight, as I'm sure you rather would in this cold weather, watching a football game maybe, right? But with all of these considerations, I finally just want to put a face on this issue, and I want to tell you this story. A blind Bonner Springs resident recently received the water bill in the amount of $1,400. She and her husband, they get by, they live honestly, they love Bonner Springs and its people, they're active in our community. On the day she recounted this story, my sister told me that she cried and was so distraught. Her bill had been under auto pay, but she called her bank and told them, don't pay that. I mean, who wants an extra $1,400 coming out of your account that you're not expecting? People are living on fixed incomes, whether it be a paycheck that doesn't raise, a disability check, Social Security, pensions, retirement. And when bills come in at that level of excess, even with a payment plan, the length and the amount will constitute economic stress over time. This is wrong. This is not how Bonner functions. We don't want people talking about bad Bonner. We want a good Bonner, and this is an issue that is just simmering out in our community. I do hope that you'll take these things into consideration, and I would like to hear a response from someone in writing in regards to your thoughts, if not as solution, but in regards to your thoughts. We paid our bills. We're blessed in many ways to be able to go ahead and do that, but I paid them under protest. I just can't see continuing to charge people $1,400 that are blind and living on a fixed income. Tonight, there was an 80-year-old lady that wanted to be here. She sent an email and said, I can't, I'm in the hospital. My last bill was $1,400. It is not the same lady. So I'm not sure, I have a feeling you know some, but I think the breadth of this is much greater and worse than we want to imagine. And I just ask that you, in whatever way necessary, put a stop to this and move forward in this Christmas season. Not looking like the Scrooge, but saying, hey, there is another way we could go about this. Let's look at that billing, that number they have when we're taking that picture, recognize we've got our equipment right, we have our personnel right, we've got an accurate reading you can depend on us for, and let's move forward from then. The past, it's the past. I've made some financial mistakes in my past, as we all have, I'm sure, and I've learned from it. So I hope that this will just be a learning lesson for our city and that we can move forward with goodwill. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please.
My name is Brandon Holloway. I live at 480 South 137th Street, Bonner Springs. I was here for the same issue, and first of all, I'd like to appreciate you. Most people come in and throw fits and complain versus bring actual issues. I'm not going to add a whole lot and take up your time. I'm one of the residents that received a large bill. I got one for $1,400. Instead of, coming up to the water department and throwing a fit, I come and ask questions. And the only thing I would like to add, because she spoke so eloquently, is to I want you to understand, I don't think it's right for everybody to be billed for past errors that have occurred, especially when the information given to us is inaccurate. What I mean by that is this: I'm only going to speak for me. I got other neighbors that couldn't make it due to being sick with COVID, but I will not speak to theirs. I would just speak to mine. I'm not blaming the people in the water department. I'm sure they're doing the best they can. When I got my bill and I contacted them, the first response was, I must have a leak. I explained to them, well, I've already tested my sprinkler system. I know that it does not have a leak. Then they explained to me, well, we've been having issues with meters, and they gave me the story about, I don't mean story as in it was false. They gave me the information about the meter and the gentleman coming out to read it and reading it accurately. And I requested to have someone come out to test my meter itself. And I was directed to a gentleman, I left his card in my car, but a gentleman that handles the meters themselves, and he came out and he did a test, but before so, they printed me my usage for the last 45 days. They said that's all they could go back. In that 45 days, every other day or every 3 days, I have it at home. I didn't think this was the place to bring it. At 12:59 and 1:59, always that exact time, I use 800 gallons. And the excuse to me from the water department was, it's my sprinkler system, it's 800 gallons when it turns on. Well, anyone that has a sprinkler system knows that's very inaccurate. I know what each head does for how long, and 800 gallons is about a pool, and you would see it in the road by then. The second excuse I was told was that that's my water softener system filling the tank. That was actually said to me. I said, my water softener has an 800-gallon tank in my house. Can you come show me where that tank's at? Because I don't know where it's at. That was actual an excuse given to me from the water department. I'm not blaming them. It could have been an employee that doesn't understand water softeners. And instead of getting upset with that person, I told them, no, ma'am, the way it works, it flushes the filters out and it runs about a dishwasher's amount of water. There's no tank it fills. That's the kind of information that I've been given. I got a bill earlier in the summer that was $400. And the excuse I was given then is I had a water leak. Well, I had no way to prove that it didn't happen, but the next month the bill was back to normal. So you're telling me the water leak sealed itself? As a resident, if there's an error and you can show me where I did not pay for water I used, and we're not talking 2-3 years, a year, I am more than happy to pay. It's just fair. It is what it is. My issue is you can't show me what I've used. The meter excuse does not add up to me. My bill was $1,400, and they said that's for a year that this meter issue was going on. I keep my bills. My bills did not change over this past year, so by the city's math, I used an extra $100 of water every month for 12 months. That just doesn't jive with me. I would just encourage the city to come up with a better solution. I asked if I refused to pay, what would happen, and I was told they would turn my water off. And then the other consideration I would try to consider in this is we need to get ahead of this information versus not telling anyone anything and just sending the bill. And then when someone comes up doesn't get upset and is calm and asks questions, you're given the answers I was given. I'm not the only one in my neighborhood in Lee Valley that has been given those informations. Given that information. I have 4 specific neighbors that are sick right now that were given about the same type of answers. I'm not blaming the employees in the water department. It is a problem. It is what it is, but this is unacceptable in how it's been handled. And I would propose that a better solution and some more information be given to us residents. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to stand and address the city council about items not on tonight's agenda? Please, sir. Yeah.
My name is Dan Wilson, and I live at 503 South 137th Terrace in Bonner Springs in Lee Valley. I'll try not to go over a lot of stuff you've already heard, but I will address that what happened to me personally. When I got my bill, of course, I called and tried to get information as much as I could. Made an appointment with Chuck Staples, and they sent a person out to my house on a Friday at 10 o'clock. I waited from 10 to 11 o'clock and nobody showed up. So I called him on the phone. I said, look, man, nobody showed up. He goes, yeah, they were there. They took pictures of your meter and they called me on the phone and gave me the reading. And I said, well, I've been here all day and I have a camera in my home and nobody came to my house. So I asked for them to reschedule. So that following Monday, they came to my house, or rescheduled it. Again, no show. So I called Chuck on the phone and I said, hey, the guy's not here. He goes, I got him on the phone right now talking to him. I said, okay, well, I'm sitting in my front yard. Come to find out, he's at the wrong address. But he assured him, Chuck, that he took a picture of the meter and took the reading and everything seemed to be okay. It just seemed like my water was fluctuating quite a bit. Could have possibly a leak. I said, sir, he's not here. I'm standing in my front yard. Finally concluded he's at the wrong address. This was in October. They had a letter come out in October that said they started taking pictures of the meters. The reason for that was because of my call. It should have been taken care of from the people that work there. They should have been taking pictures from the beginning of the meters. But I asked him, I said, here, he gave you the information of my meter, but he's at the wrong location. Don't your meters have an identification on it to show that meter responds to my address? He goes, yeah, but it's a little hard to get to. Well, it's not. It's right in front. You can see it. So they never verified my meter and the number that went to my place where I lived. So that's why they implemented in October to start taking pictures and verifying it. So they hadn't done that before. I don't know why they never thought of that. It's not ingenious, but nobody thought about it. And when you look at going back a year prior to that, I worked for water pollution for 25 years with the city, and I read meters. I know all about them. And I know sometimes management puts pressure on you to get the job done that's impossible. And I think that's what happened here with the city. I got a letter here stating that they had 2 days to try to get all that information down of about 900 meters. When I talked to the gentleman that was reading the meter, he said it's humanly impossible for 1 or 2 people of us to get that accomplished. What I'm thinking is they just looked down the averages of what your bill was and just wrote it down. In here, to take the monkey off their back, they said they inadvertently probably misread the meters. That's not what happened. You can't be a genius not to think about what happened. They hurried up and just wrote down a bunch of numbers so they could hurry up, get it taken care of, so they can get the billing out. That's my conclusion. Can I prove it? No. Is it common sense? Yes. You can't get all those numbers down. And how many people had the wrong readings? Doesn't make sense. That's because it's not true. So consequently, a lot of people got their bills wrong. Now, to me, if you write down numbers and you work for the city and you're verifying those numbers and they're not correct, that's falsified information. That's false. To me, that's committing a crime. I think this is a cover-up. Now, and I think it was done on purpose, but trying to hurry up and get things done. Nobody knew what to do. I understand the circumstances they were surrounded by, handled completely wrong. And like they said, a lot of people with $1,400 bills, when you look at $1,400 spread out over a year, that's $100 more per month. That doesn't make sense either. I used to be an insurance agent, so we have a clause that says contributory negligence. Kind of applies here, but kind of don't. But you can read into it. Contributory means both parties share the expense. Even though us as property owners didn't do anything wrong, but if the city is saying, well, we still owe it because we think you still used it, okay, may be true. But on the other hand, look what you guys did. So why don't you take the number to satisfy everybody? If somebody owes $1,400, split it. Said, well, we really can't prove it because you can't. You don't know those numbers. They weren't correct numbers. And let everybody just say, okay, if you put it on your credit card and pay half, we'll take the other half off your bill. I think you would get a lot further with that than the way things are being handled now. Something to that effect. Because why should we be out all of this money at one time? And if you could prove to everybody that we use that amount of water, that would be great. But they can't prove it. And then what I also found that was kind of strange is on all the bills that we got, they always had a chart on the bill. And the chart would show you your consumption that you used. Okay, well, the bill that I got showed me using 35,000 gallons of water in that month. I didn't use 35,000 gallons. That's what they concluded I used, and it put it all on one bill. Well, when you do that, then you've got a surcharge of sewer charges for treating all that water. Well, that goes up too. What I found funny too was in the following month when we got a bill, they didn't put the chart on there anymore. I said, well, called in, I said, how come you guys don't have the chart anymore? We just stopped. Well, that's because they're hiding something. They put on there that showed that I used 35,000 gallons and everybody else used that in that month, and it's not right. So all that documentation's all wrong. So I, again, like everybody else says, have some concessions here. I know you guys probably are working on a limited budget. So are we. But why can't we share in that and just tell everybody whatever you owe, 50-50? I think you'll gain a lot of prestige for that. So I can go on, but all the stuff that I would want to cover is pretty much what they covered. But there was a lot of mistakes for the city that was done wrong. And when I talked to the big dog, Sean Peterson, and asked for some concessions, he said, we don't make those decisions. The decisions is made by the council. So you guys are the council. So we're pleading to you guys if you can think this thing through and come to some conclusion that you can help us out on this end. We don't know what your budget is. We don't know how far in the hole you're in or anything like that. But I think that would be a nice move on your guys' part to help the people out that need the help. So that's all I have to say there.
Thank you, sir.
Is there any questions for anybody else that?
Not at this time, but thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else like to stand and address the city council, please? No? Anyone else like to say me too, or? Me too? Others here for that? Anyone else like to stand and address the city council on any other items that are not on tonight's agenda? Thank you all very much. We do have some information concerning the water meter concerns that we had. Mr. Abart, do you want to address what has happened so far and the process we've been through?
Frank Abart, Public Works Department. So, as you may recall, we went through this review a couple of weeks ago, and Dan was here, and yeah, I guess he wasn't here actually, but he gave a presentation that is in process at the time, and they're going through a regrouping, a reorganization of that company, and
That's the company that's providing the automatic readers.
that is correct, yeah. And so that is in process. We've not received any of the additional readers yet at this time. And I was not able to make a phone call to him to get an update this afternoon. So that's all I know at this time.
Addressing the billings over the last, 10 months, and how that's happened?
Sure, as you know, we went through that process and we worked on multiple different options of trying to get these meters read. And none of them worked out very well because of the time constraints. And beginning October 1st, we started this process and putting considerable resources to it, I might add, to actually take a picture and document every single one of the meters that's having an issue so that we can start reconciling all of this and getting the readings right. We're going to continue that until such time as we have an automated process in place.
So the under reading of the meters was the concern?
Sure, yes.
And at some point in time, you were able to
During
figure out-
October, yeah.
October, you were able to figure out the total usage?
That's generally where most of the readings were reconciled between what was actually used and what was actually read at that particular time. So these meters they actually used the water that went through these meters. The thing is, they were not billed. They were underbilled for several months up until we got everything reconciled in October. And that's the result of several of these bills that they're talking about this evening.
And the number of, we have, 3,500 meters, and about 900 of the meters were involved in this?
Yes, of the new meters, actually less than that.
Less than 900? And were all of them this extreme?
No,
The majority of them?
I don't even know what the percentage was, but
Ms. LaPlante, do you have more of an idea on the percentage of those 900 meters? Uh-huh. And the differences of usage and what they were billed is the main
yes.
difference?
Frank, you mentioned October. Well, there's been some confusion in my mind as to how far back this went. Could you clarify that for us? How many months?
We started having the
Establish it.
problem. We started having this problem in January, so
Okay.
it could be a good solid 9 months. At worst case scenario, I'd say.
Right, I just kind
Yeah.
of wanted to get an idea, because sometimes I've heard, well, month, I've heard 3 months. I did hear January,
Sure.
but
I mean, that's when we first started experiencing the problem, and we were trying to work through a whole different resolution, several different iterations, actually,
well, I thought this was
to how to get this done,
for
but,
them for all of us to at least have a frame of reference, so
right.
approximately.
But they are now and will continue to be read and pictures taken and documented every single month now, until such time as it's automated.
Thank you.
Other questions?
So Frank, on on an average, what our constituents were paying before the new meter, and then on an average of what they're, once everything is fixed, what percentage of a difference would there be with that? So it's gonna be a tick higher on once, right?
Well, these are meters that were put in place, probably most of them over a year ago or about a year ago. And they were on an automated read until the end of December, at such time as the company just shut the lights off, essentially. And then we had to start figuring out how to get this done manually. And essentially, what we have decided is that the only way to do this is to commit virtually all the staff to be out and reading these things in order to get them in a timely manner, take pictures, document, and
But respectfully, we don't know what that difference.
what the difference would be between
Right,
a
what
new
the-
meter
what-
and an old meter?
Yeah, I mean, so
okay.
there's, right, obviously it's gonna cost more because we're getting a better reading.
I gotta think so, yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're putting them in place, is to replace
Sure,
15 and 20-year-old meters.
Which is a good thing.
But the reading system, that's where the problem came in. The technology reading the new meters failed on us. And we had to go back and start reading them manually, which is what we're doing today. So it's not so much the meter that failed in any way, shape, or form. It's the reading
and our
and
contingency
recording of the
plan.
meter.
Right, with the new meters coming, right?
No, the
there's-
new readers.
Readers are,
Right.
okay, the new readers. Well, let's just kind of cut to the chase, right? I own a business, right? And I can't go back and back charge.
Okay.
Can't do it, right? Probably wouldn't want to do it. I'd get similar feedback and stuff like that. So, you know, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is if the liabilities, if the problem's on our side, then so should our constituents, right, have to bear the burden of doing such. And I think they made a lot of, I got voted in, right? And I'm in Ward 1, and I don't know if anybody's in Ward 1, but at some point in time, I'm sure I'm gonna see the same thing, maybe not as much, because I don't have an irrigation system, right? So I'm just thinking, we're doing the best we can. I'm supporting what you're doing, but at the same, and we come out with some plans that we're trying to alleviate some of the stress of having to pay it. But the veracity, the accuracy of what the billings are, we're 100% confident that the difference and what they should have been reading and what we've been able, that information we've been able to gather and what they're paying, it's not like we're just throwing a number out there, right? I mean,
That is
these are
correct.
accurate numbers.
Regardless of what you're hearing here, we know what went through the meter.
Okay.
And that's what we're being billed for, or what we're billing and reconciling from what wasn't actually billed, and catching that up, that reconciliation that's taken place over the last month or two.
One of the other hardships has been, one of the gentlemen referenced the misinformation or the attempts to use common sense and rectify or at least explain some of these unusual occurrences in the water bills, and things such as your water softener and you have a leak and it only shows up some of the time, and all those different things. How are those situations addressed with water customers that call with a concern now?
It's my understanding, and I know because I hear this take place all the time, staff does try to make every effort to make sure that there isn't a leak or another problem that's contributing to a higher bill. And they'll go out to people's houses, they do this all the time, and make an attempt to try to make sure there isn't other problems involved.
Do you lead with
higher
the
bills.
reading, the under reading?
It depends on the situation.
And-
It depends
and
on
as-
where.
As far as letters that have gone out to the customers?
I don't even remember, but it seems like there was some correspondence that went out, but I don't remember exactly.
Sean?
I can't remember. Did we actually send something out finally?
Yeah, there was phone calls made to the account holders, and then a letter went out with additional information, so they would have received 2 correspondences.
And we called a lot of people as well. So it's a mess. It's a bad deal. Can't deny that. Wish it never happened.
So these automatic readers that we heard from the representative last meeting, they haven't shipped yet? You
They
don't-
have not.
And do you have any idea when those will ship? It
last
sounded
I
as if
heard-
they'd be here before this meeting, but,
Well, yeah, he said it'd be the week after Thanksgiving.
okay.
So this is the week. But the company that does the reading and everything, that's, it's still in reorganization or whatever they're planning here. So I don't have 100%
If you
answer
could,
for you today that they'll be here tomorrow.
if you could let us know when that happens, let them know to notify the city council, I think we'd all appreciate knowing
I
when
think
those were
that would be
here
appropriate.
or on their way.
I think December 1st was actually the date that he threw out after our last meeting, which would be Friday, I think, but
Very good.
nonetheless.
I know someone spoke to difficult budgets and the tight budget that the water department has. No, this isn't a result of a new water treatment plant, thank you very much. And the water budgets are extremely tight. And this water usage, as does Mr. Bart and all of us, have a high confidence in the amount of water used. We have very low confidence in how it was billed. It was underbilled for a significant period of time. That results in that reconciliation happening all at one time. And we've tried to accommodate those extremes with our finance department, Mrs. LaPlante, making payment plans. Yeah, it is difficult to burden the entire town with all of our mistakes. And so in an effort to be as fair as possible, we've tried to accommodate these payment plans in the best faith that we can. I know it's not a best case scenario, but with such tight budgets, I don't know of another option that the city has. Does anyone from the city have any other concerns? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Bart.
Thanks.
Rolling along, we'll move on to anyone else that would like to address the city council about items not on tonight's agenda that haven't already been addressed. Seeing none, we'll move ahead to the agenda. The consent agenda this evening includes minutes for the November 13th City Council meeting, claims for city operations, third quarter financial reports, the license renewal and for massage therapy business establishment and massage therapist license of Nicole Weehee with Spa Raffia, license renewal for massage therapist license for Simona Simmons with Midwest Chiropractic, and the city council meeting dates and city holidays for 2024. Anything to be pulled by city staff? Concerns by the citizens? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
So moved by Mr. Shannon and seconded by Mr. Stevens. Vote, please.
Vaughn,
Yes.
McMahon,
Yes.
Kip,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Gurley,
Yes.
Cannon?
Yes.
Wood? Yes. Motion passes.
Very good. On to new business item number 1, Fire EMS Regional Automatic Mutual Aid Agreement update.
Mayor and Council, Tim Richards, Fire Chief, come before you to kind of provide an overview for an official council action we'll be looking forward to at the next council meeting, just to kind of give an overview of an auto aid agreement that we are seeking to enter into with Kansas City, Kansas Fire and Edwardsville Fire Department.
Very good. Thank you.
There we go.
Since this is,
Oh,
go right ahead.
As it's written right now, it would go effective January 1st. And again, this is an auto aid agreement. The whole entire Kansas City metropolitan area on the Missouri and Kansas side have a mutual aid agreement that's been signed for, I think, since the mid-'80s. An auto aid agreement differs from a mutual aid agreement in that a mutual aid agreement requires that a responding police officer or fire official has to be responding or on a scene and then request that mutual aid. An auto aid agreement is an automatic thing that happens, and that's what we're looking to enter into with here on January 1st. They're used extensively in the fire service and EMS services around the nation. Johnson County has a very robust automatic aid agreement. You will see ambulances and fire trucks from different cities and other cities all the time. It really beckons back to the days of old when it was neighbors helping neighbors. It does allow municipalities to spend less money overall. I know we spend a lot of money in fire and EMS, but it does provide a lot of extra resources for those calls that maybe would happen once or twice a year. And it does it in an automatic fashion, which gets help coming this way quicker. We continue to see increased calls of all types in Bonner Springs, along with population, brings more calls. The approach that we'll be talking about provides for better service to our citizens and better service and safety to our employees as well. Within the auto aid agreement, there's the state provisions that allow local governments to enter into these type of agreements with each other. It really, again, centers around mutual interest and common good. It protects the city and our city employees just as if they were running a call here if they were to get hurt or anything like that. So all that's covered in there as well. What this really will do, right now on the left, you'll see on the screen on a structure fire, and this is just like a house fire just down the block. Right now we would get one of our engines, our ambulance, an Edwardsville engine, and an engine from Fairmount Township, which is a baser area. That gives us about 11 people, give or take, on a house fire. With this new agreement, the same house after January 1st would get us around 22 people. So just by entering into this agreement, we're going to double the amount of responders that come in on a house fire. There are two staffing models in the country. One is NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association, and the other is the CFAI, the Center for Fire Accreditation International. NFPA provides a set of standards, and you've all heard of NFPA. They're the governing body that kind of governs everything that we do in the fire service. You can see there their initial alarm deployment that they discuss at NFPA. The CFA model is more of a community-driven approach to staffing and what fire and emergency medical services do in a given community. Through a strategic plan that involves citizens and business leaders in your community and internal folks within the fire department, you come up with a staffing model that is good for your particular community. With this proposed change, that kind of shows the CFAI model on what they term as an effective response force.
for a 2,000 square foot on average house fire is those 19 people. And the CFAI model kind of takes the items that we would conduct at a house fire that really need to be done almost simultaneously. So that's where that number comes from, rather than a national standard that just says a number. It matches the need of your community to the responders you have coming. We've worked, Sean, I don't remember when we had our first meeting in regards to this, June or July maybe? So we've been, the three municipalities and our legal staff and fire staff have been volleying this back and forth for quite a while. One thing that's, I think, very important that I mentioned up there, it does, the authority in charge of responding units shall be the sole judge of how much assistance can be furnished. So regardless, if we have a thunderstorm rolling through the metro area or a snowstorm, we have the ability, if we get toned out, to say, hey, we're not coming to Kansas City, Kansas for a building fire. We need to keep our resources here. We also have discussed that it would be very easy on a Friday night, busy Friday night, for our ambulance to be transporting one of our citizens to KU Medical Center. They could get stuck up there on the eastern side of Kansas City, Kansas for all night. We do have ability within this agreement for them to more or less go out of service until they get back into our city limits, then they could go back in service. Does that make sense? So that's one of the provisions that was important to us, just because a lot of the resources from Kansas City, Kansas on occasion get sucked into the eastern part of town, and we wanted kind of a get-out-of-jail-free card for our units that were transporting our own patients into the eastern part of KCK. I'm not going to read all those to you because you guys can all read. There are the use of the incident command system is something that we're well versed in. KCK is, Edwardsville, we use it daily. It does require that we do some joint training and exercise. We're actually doing some joint training with Kansas City, Kansas. We did some last week and at Edwardsville, and we're doing some this week. And we're providing some incident command training to Kansas City, Kansas senior staff Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week, actually. So this has kind of forced some relationships, which I think is a pretty positive move compared to maybe some of the things that have gone on in the past year. There is a little bit of a difference in medical protocols between Kansas City, Kansas. We, as an organization, have adopted Johnson County's protocols years ago. The protocols, probably, if most people in the room read them, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And I'm not a paramedic, I'm an EMT, but I hear from our paramedics that the differences between our medical protocols are not that significant. And how that would be handled is if we go to a scene north of, or the Casey's that's north of Azura Amphitheater there, we would treat that patient under our protocols until Kansas City, Kansas got there. They would take over and start using their protocols, and vice versa. If an ambulance for some reason from Kansas City, Kansas was over here, our units were busy, they would treat that patient with the Kansas City, Kansas protocols. And again, the differences in the protocols are very, very slight, but you need to know that there are a few differences. But Dr. Beaver, our medical director, is well aware of the differences and completely comfortable with this as well. Within the agreement, there's a 60-day written notice that we can get out of any of these agreements. There's an annual review that will happen each January, probably in December, so it's official in January. Next. Dispatch procedures and CAD systems largely is how we are dispatched today. We are changing some radio frequencies that will create some better organization and less need for our folks to change channels when they're going to certain types of calls. So it will be more of a fluid process from an end user standpoint. There's very little cost on our part to we already have AVLs, which are automated vehicle locators, so dispatch can tell where our units are anytime. We are going to have to change some phone line things to allow dispatch to see us in with Kansas's resources, but it's not, the expense is not that great, and we can do that well within our budget. We, like I mentioned, will continue to use KCK Fire Dispatch for our dispatching needs and those items. I mentioned already the criteria for mutual aid compared to auto aid. This in no way gets in the way of that mutual aid process. So if we were to have a hazardous material incident with the railroad here, we would still have the ability to call Kansas City, Missouri, Olathe, Overland Park Hazmat to come, KCK Hazmat to come and help us with incidences like those. So this doesn't get in the way of the metro-wide mutual aid process. So, Mr. Mayor, you look like you had a question.
Yeah, I got a question on that. So the hazmat response, that costs us it now, and it will still cost us, right?
No, it really doesn't cost us.
doesn't cost
And any costs that we may occur as a city would be reimbursed by the shipper. So if it were a trucking company or the railroad, sometimes it takes 18 months or 24 months to get reimbursed, but my experience has been that the fire departments are pretty successful in getting reimbursed for any of those costs.
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, ICS and the National Incident Management System are followed by all the organizations, so there won't be a problem with that. Again, I talked about mutual aid and auto aid. Very important point also, it doesn't say this specifically in the agreement, but this is the bold part there. It recognizes primary allegiance for the fire and EMS to its own citizens. That's kind of a deal that was, again, important to me as we were looking at this, that our ambulance, when it's up, it just drops a patient off at KU Medical Center, I want them to be able to get back into our city if instead of going right back in service and having to run a call right down the street from KU Medical Center, because they could get stuck up there for quite a while, as you're aware, I'm sure. Again, this is a very common thing that happens all over the country. Happens in the metro area on the Missouri side, happens in Johnson County, has been going on there since the early 90s. It really will strengthen an ongoing partnership between a already really strong partnership we have with Edwardsville Fire and a good relationship that we're starting to build more so with Kansas City, Kansas Fire. Quarterly reports will be given to the city manager's office on how often we're going into KCK to help them, how often they're coming into our city to help us. And with that, I would stand for any questions or be more than happy to answer anything via email over the next couple of weeks or get together and talk.
Very good. I have one right at the very beginning. You mentioned Fairmont to our west. Would this also include Sherman Township to our northwest, Baser?
It could, but Fairmont would be the most likely. So this doesn't get in the way of any other agreements that we currently have. Right now, we have an agreement with Fairmont to come into our city for any structure fires. So we would continue that. We would get a Fairmont engine, our engine, Edwardsville engine, and the remainder would most likely be a couple Kansas City, Kansas fire units, and maybe one or two of their aerials would come.
And then with Fairmont, we would go to Fairmont.
Yeah, we do that as well, and this won't get in the way of that at all.
And I don't know what's past Fairmont Fire District.
Tonganoxie or, there's a fire
Do you
district.
expect that other than Extreme Mutual?
No, that would be more of a mutual aid.
Okay. What about Johnson County to our south?
Once we get to our full staffing in January, where we're full-time, I have a good relationship with Chief Potter, the fire chief of Shawnee. That new station that you're aware of right there at Johnson Drive and K7 really will most likely, at least on the south side of our city, probably take the spot of one of the KCK engines. So if we can enter into those type of agreements, what I really want is the 5 or 6 closest fire trucks to come on a fire here.
Yeah.
And I want the closest ambulance to come. So after we have full staffing and sometime in the spring, my idea is to get with Sean and get his approval to approach Shawnee to get a similar type automatic aid agreement with them.
Good.
As well.
Great. I think that will benefit not only our community, but the surrounding communities as well.
Could you give me an example of a minor medical protocol between the,
It might be some dosages of the drugs that we would give through an IV. It might be a little different approach on some stroke protocols. But I could get you a more.
no, you've given me the idea.
Yeah. From what I understand, again, I'm an EMT, which is relative to a paramedic, a relatively low level emergency medical responder, but all of our paramedics have looked at both protocols and seem very comfortable with the small differences there might be.
Yeah, real quickly, I've always been a big believer in working together with departments. I've always been a proponent of that, and I know we have enjoyed the luxury of having this mutual aid. It's helped us considerably. Probably getting a little ahead of the game, but curious if we end up moving forward several years down the road with a new facility up in the Northeast Corridor, how would this apply with automatic aid? Because in theory, we would be talking within a street or two, we would be KCK.
Right.
In all three corners. Would we end up running on a lot of KCK calls versus them dispatching out of, it'd be what, 96th Street?
We would probably go there more. But right now, the balance, and it's mainly medical calls, and it's mainly centered around Azura Amphitheater. KCK actually provides us more mutual aid today than we provide them. So there will be that balance, but again, having come from the Johnson County system, there are some areas where Olathe has a fire station that is way closer to parts of Overland Park, and they run calls into Overland Park all day long, but the reciprocity over a year's time really does kind of even out.
And since our department, just like our neighbors to the east, Edwardsville, are smaller departments, what type of burden does that put on us when we do go on those calls for coverage?
Yeah, it does provide that. I mean, it does create a little bit of a burden, but the feeling is the benefit, it will outweigh that long-term for us. And even in the short term, from time to time, whether it be a big incident where we have an auto extrication out on I-70 that's maybe a little bit more involved than what we have the personnel or folks to handle. KCK came and helped us with a semi-extrication, a semi-tractor trailer jackknifed and had a wreck a couple weeks ago out on I-70. So they do come and assist us quite a bit also with those bigger things that left. You know, if we were a community out in western Kansas with no help around us at all, that would be a whole different thing. So it does allow us to kind of take advantage of some of the things that KCK has the personnel in Shawnee and all of us together are way stronger than we are just individually. I think over time we're probably better at fighting grass fires than Kansas City, Kansas is. So, you know, I envision that our grass unit will be in Kansas City, Kansas from time to time, helping them out on incidents. And we do have a provision within this agreement to, if we are going to have a long-term incident that's going to take our unit out of here, we have the ability to call our people back on overtime or on straight time to come staff another unit, or Kansas City, Kansas, or Edwardsville, if they're not busy, they can move a unit into our station and stand by while our folks are busy.
And I've seen that happen before already. We've been called to mutual aid, and Fairmont would come back cover a good portion of our city. So those are things. This is just an automatic use of those kind of things.
Right.
Thank you.
You said this pertains mostly to large structure fires?
It really will pertain to almost every call. The closest unit will be dispatched on all calls.
So you know by the call out code.
Correct.
What you're responding to.
Correct.
Does someone then know, I'm trying to wrap my head around the process. So you're toned out for a specific call, everybody starts en route. Does then the jurisdictional chief wave people off when they know they have enough respondents?
Yes.
Or does everybody show up and then?
No, absolutely. If we were to go on scene, because some of our structure fires end up being false alarms, or a person calls it in that's not familiar and it was somebody with a smoking meat in their backyard or something. Our unit would go on scene, do a size up, take command, go around to the back of the house, realize it's a smoker, and we'd get on the radio and tell everybody to disregard. And all the organizations do that same thing.
So do we have the ability, if we're the first responders into some places not our jurisdiction, if we're first response, arrive in the scene in KCK and determine it's a false alarm, do we have the right to call it off at that point?
That's correct.
You don't have to wait for.
And what I kind
jurisdiction?
of try to use is those apartments, I don't know the name of that street, but the apartments just north of the Casey's right there, just north of Missouri Amphitheater, that's in Kansas City, Kansas. We most likely would be the first unit on that scene. If we got there and it was a very similar situation, or it was maybe food on the stove, we would go give a size up, take command, and we would disregard. They probably, because it's in their city, would have one unit come in and kind of take over for us, so we could clear and get back to our city, and we would expect the same from them. Also, if we were out and they came, or Edwardsville came, it's important to me, if we can, to have a representative from the city of Bonner Springs at every single call. But there will be times during heavy call loads that maybe, and today we do it with Edwardsville. There's time Edwardsville comes in and runs an ambulance call in our city, and we never go, and that same thing happens with them.
Okay, thank you.
I know you guys are going up and down 7 Highway all the time, it seems. Anyone else? Questions, concerns? Please.
Chief, with all this aid, mutual aid and everything, which I think is great, does this help all jurisdictions in fire insurance? In other words, through the insurance companies, because we've got better coverage, better support.
Yes, ISO, when they come and do a study on our particular city, they take these auto aid agreements. Now, the mutual aid, which we currently have, is not considered in an ISO rating. Auto aid, which we're entering into, is considered. So, more or less, although we only have one fire station, from an ISO perspective, we will get credit as if we had 5 fire stations. So, it really can be a positive with that as well.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, ma'am? Don't see any other questions. Thank you, Chief.
I think
Go right ahead.
I think our plan is to bring the actual agreement before the council at the next council meeting.
You have it as an attachment. If there are any questions, concerns, the intent was to try to get you a little bit more information this evening. That way we were able to come back, present those changes back to the other parties involved, make sure everything is agreeable, and then come back with the intent of having this go into place January 1.
That's what we'd like to see, yeah.
Very good.
And also, I don't know if many heard, but the interim fire chief at Kansas City, Kansas Fire became their official fire chief. Dennis Rubin is his name. He has been the fire chief of Atlanta, the fire chief of Washington, D.C. He's also was a city manager for a number of years as well. So that was, I think, a very positive thing for their organization.
Great.
And somebody that's been involved in these conversations.
Yeah.
As well going on. So from that consistency standpoint of what's been presented tonight, that he's been involved in that conversation. So there is some maybe comfort in knowing that that tenure continues moving forward.
And if there are any other questions you think of, please feel free to email me, or I can meet with any of you at any time. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Chief.
Moving along to item number 2, a bid award for demolition of 820 North Nettleton Avenue and 13103 Metropolitan Avenue. Staff.
Good evening, Council. Mr. Mayor, Mark Lee, Community Development Director. Here to wrap up the demolition of 820 North Nettleton and forgot the address of the other one, 13103 Metropolitan. Resolutions have been passed, set the public hearing, deemed them dangerous and unsafe, and then the last 2, number 11 and number 12, authorized staff to solicit bids for demolition. Went out for bids, started receiving some phone calls from some of the contractors asking about asbestos and who would be responsible for that. Wasn't quite sure at that time how to go about it. Figured it all out, reached out to a few firms in the Kansas City area, got one on board to go out and do the asbestos inspections for us. I guess what I'm leading up to here is kind of the delay in this, because as it was set months ago. Got that information back, went back out again as soon as we did for bids, and now here we are again today. There, in the packet, there was, you'll see there's a paragraph at the bottom that talks about how one of the bids came in surprisingly low. Kind of took me by surprise. I reached back out to them immediately and was like, did you guys account for abatement? They were like, yes, we did. We actually reached out and talked to KDHE, and they said we could go about it this way. Mr. Peterson suggested that I reach out to KDHE and verify that. I did look on their website and did see it in there, so it was like, okay, well, this seems like a viable approach. Actually called and talked to Philip Schloman, I believe is his name, the head of asbestos abatement for the state. We had some discussions about their process and how they were going to go about it. I sent him the report, probably about a day's worth of phone conversations back and forth. He finally said, yeah, I agree with the way they're going to go about it, and it can be done. Their process, from my understanding, is they're basically just going to soak the entire buildings and remove it that way. That way it becomes non-fibrous at that point in time, where most of the other contractors were going to go in and remove individual pieces at a time, which their cost then exceeded that. Basically, though, that is what we are here for this evening. The low bid was Rimco LLC at $28,810. That is for asbestos remediation, demolition of the two structures, removal of everything on site, and clean fill brought in.
Very good. Anything else to add? None? Anyone else have anything to add?
I knew this process was going on, and I met with the people up there because they were looking for asbestos. But nobody let me know this was going on tonight, and it had gone any further with this. I've never been notified. So we went through a. Did you notify me of what you found out?
No, I mean, you were notified through the resolutions that we were going out for bids on the structures to have them demolished.
Well, isn't this the final say-so of getting it done here?
It's already been done. This is the awarding of the bid to do it.
I'd like to get a stay of execution, so I think that building still needs to stay. And I had Dennis Stuck come out, who was an architect and works with Mark Manville, and they looked at the building, and that building's safe. There is that back door needs to be braced up and stuff, but that building's stable. And we re-roofed the top of it and I paid taxes on that thing for 10 years. So you put it out for bid, but I mean, is that what you're planning on taking it down now?
Well, that's what's already been planned, already been approved. And the safety opportunity for those safety engineers to address the structural integrity of that, you had that opportunity. That time has come and passed. And so now we're forced to be to the point to where we're going to have to award this bid.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other staff? Citizens? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve awarding the bid for the demolition of the two structures located at 820 North Nettleton and 13103 Metropolitan Avenue to Remco Demolition LLC for the amount of $28,810.
Second.
So moved by Mr. Stevens and seconded by Mr. Shannon. So we'll start down here with Mr. Shannon. Do you have any questions, concerns, comments?
Thank you. The city's gonna pay the amount of $28,810. So, Sean, sir, remind me how we recoup our funds? And how long it will
architect versus the person that owns it that should be paying for this?
Right. It would run a similar course to when we deal with code violations, grass that we have to mow, things of that nature. So the process generally is that whatever the cost incurred, so in this case, the $28,810, and any additional cost would be assigned to the property. So there's two properties in question here. So those would go through the finance department. They get sent over to the county to be assessed onto the tax rolls, and then paid as a assessment on the tax rolls.
Through the county?
As part of your payment to the county for your property taxes.
If I can, sir.
Please.
We'll initially start by sending them a bill. If it's not paid, then it'll proceed to the county.
The owner of the property?
Yes.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Ma'am?
Random question, there's been some rumblings about the historical significance of that building. Is all of the building material required to be removed as part of this process? Specifically the glass blocks. Some people have mentioned it would be nice if they could have these glass blocks. It just all needs to be carried off and done.
I appreciate you doing all the checking with the state on that, because just like everybody else, I'm sure they looked and went the low bid compared to the others. And staff is completely happy and the state's happy, so I'm glad we were able to find somebody who was able to do it. Save Mr. Tyner a few dollars, hopefully, so. Thank you.
No other questions? Yes, please, ma'am.
What's the timeline on this?
They will have 30 days.
No other questions, concerns, comments? Seeing none, vote please.
Kip?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Long?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
McMahon?
Yes.
Gurley? Yes. Stevens?
Yes.
Motion passes.
On to item number 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
On to item number 3, which is an executive session for consultation with an attorney pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
What time will we be resuming?
We'll need, it is 8:47 right now, and I would say 30 minutes. Okay?
You need it read back, or may I so move?
No, you gotta say the words.
I will make a motion to go into executive session for consultation with an attorney pursuant to exception KSA 75-4319B2. The open meeting will resume in council chambers at 9, do the math, 13?
18.
9:18.
Second.
So moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we will be back.